Hello, welcome everyone to the 2024 Osumania 7 Key World Cup. We are here for the very first matches that we'll see for the entire tournament, for the entire year, for all of the World Cups. This is going to be the first one to kick us all off, and we are in, of course, the round of 24, not the round of 16 like it was last year. We have expanded it out to include a few extra teams, and we're going to be seeing some of those teams battling out on the first map pool here. I'm Potassium F, going to be commentating together alongside Surfchew85. How are you doing today?
Well, it's pretty much 11 p.m. where I live. And let's just say it's kind of a good timing that I got I drank some coffee before going into the booth, since we have a pretty spicy matchup to open up the entire season here. We have Vietnam and Sweden facing each other in this round of 24 match. Vietnam did seed number 13, if I'm not mistaken, and Sweden number 20. And well, the seeds, I'd say, especially for the early game, they won't really matter that much, especially with how easy the pools are relatively to the later pools. But like, if you look at the scores, there are some pretty close ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at these two, as you said, Vietnam being the higher seed doesn't actually mean that much this round, because if you look specifically at the scores, you're looking at Stage 1, Stage 2, some of those slightly easier, physically easier maps in the qualifier pool. Actually, Sweden and Vietnam were basically tied on those early game rice kind of maps. I do think, as far as the LNs go, Vietnam does look like they have a fairly significant advantage over Sweden, but when it comes to these easier pools here in the round of 24, some of these accuracy-focused rice maps, I think Sweden absolutely can take Vietnam all the way in this match, and we'll see exactly what ends up happening. I feel like this round, due to the maps being slightly easier than they normally are at the start of the tournament, I think we are in for some potential upsets.
We are indeed set for some. And just to note, given the changes from the previous World Cup, this is the round of 24, but not all 24 teams who qualify for the qualifiers are playing this weekend, if I am not mistaken. The top 8 teams are waiting for the winners of the matches, winners of the matches this weekend. And for this matchup specifically, Team Philippines awaits the winner of this one. And well, another change is that we have protects implemented in the pool. So if my notes are correct, the winner of the roles will be the ones protecting first and getting the first pick, as well as we are seeing Sweden protecting Raindrop and banning Team 37, which is expected from a team that is very close on Rice with Vietnam, and they want to be super conservative with strategy. Like, get the LN control out of the way. It's Avril MWC 7K 2024 version.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Vietnam banning Rice 1 as well, that is the more speed-focused map. That is definitely one of the strongest maps that Sweden showed during the qualifier stage, that kind of more delay Stage 2. So I think banning that one out of the way makes a lot of sense as well. Interestingly enough, I did kind of expect Vietnam maybe to protect LN1 instead of LN3 here, but maybe Vietnam also not the most comfortable when it comes to such heavy coordination focus in the LN1, as well as, just to note, I think LN1 has a total of like 600 notes. So if you miss once, your score is gone. I think that kind of might dissuade some teams from picking that one, because if you're not consistent, then there might be some very, very large score variance between each attempt.
I mean, to be fair, even if you're the team that has an obvious advantage on LN, charts like that are still super dangerous, especially with the thing you mentioned about the note count. If you miss in the middle, there's no chance to recover at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you miss in the middle of that map, you're stuck at like 300 max combo, never hitting the combo cap. But thankfully for both of these two teams, they are not going to have to worry about that in this match. We do have Vietnam having the first pick. They're going to pick LN2, which is the more density focused of the LN picks. They're opting to save their own protect of LN3 just a little bit longer. And I think, I think the LNs should, in theory, on paper, favor Vietnam overall. I feel like that is the strongest kind of advantage we might see for any team in this match. But this one, as kind of the more density-focused map, I feel like even though Sweden might be a little bit less comfortable with the LNs, they might still be fine overall with this one. We'll have to see. As we're seeing, I believe these 4 players should be the ones that we're seeing for most maps. Actually, wait. Cratey being switched in instead of Sadcat, I think.
Well, Sadcat being in here, I can't recall exactly if Sadcat is more professionally is more of a Rice player than an LN player, but at least from what I've seen over like reviewing these players, like Erase Self and Cratey do appear like they are the ones that would be more comfortable with these LNs. And another thing, LN density, especially in the early game, usually tend to play like a straightforward chord stream chart. There's some differences, especially release timings and all of that stuff. But if you're Sweden, this might be one of the better chances to steal a point off on the noodles in this pool.
Yeah, well, we'll get into it. We'll have to see, because I do think Sadcat was one of the strongest accuracy players as well for Sweden during the qualifier stage, but does seem that they are a little bit less comfortable with some of the LN maps overall. So Sweden being able to switch their play is very valuable, of course, throughout the course of the match. But so far, off to good starts for all the players. A little bit of accuracy dropped actually on the side of Fishcake and Erased Self, dropping down to the low 99s. And Cratey as well now dropping down.
Well, overall, Vietnam does have the accuracy advantage in here. As we saw Sweden actually carrying pretty consistent accuracies between both Erased Self and Cratey here. Erased Self dropping below 98%. But it's kind of normal, really. If you're one of those players that just needs some, who could actually most likely combo LNs but not exactly get the accuracies that are required, especially in the early game of any single Mania tournament out there. And we're really seeing that difference here.
Yeah, we're seeing the accuracy being dropped lower and lower here on the side of Cratey in particular. Fishcake managing to regain that accuracy back up to 99.4, so doing very well. All 4 players on the full combo, by the way. But it is kind of the difference in comfort we are seeing overall. Team Sweden definitely able to hold on to play these patterns, but just lacks the level of comfort needed to accurately hit these releases, to really aim for that sharpshooting accuracy.
And it isn't exactly the easiest thing to do, even with this OD6. It's pretty forgiving, but charts this dense, unless like you're super used to sharpshooting, as you mentioned, LN accuracy, you're most likely going to be maintaining combos, as I mentioned, that Erase Self, unfortunately, getting the first miss of this entire World Cup.
But that miss did not matter either way in the end of things, and I mean, in a way it can be good to get your chokes out of the way early on in the match when they don't matter as much. So Vietnam here on the board with their own first pick, with a very nice double FC coming from both of the players. We can see the difference in accuracy and in ratio from all of the players on Vietnam, looking very strong in the LNs at least here.
Well, now it's time for Sweden to get a pick on the board here. Well, it does appear, at least from the chat, the players do express some level of nerves here. I mean, with fair, these two teams are the ones opening the World Cup, and there's some pressure to deliver a very good match.
Yeah, ooh, I like this pick though from Sweden here. We're going over to not just the rice pool, but we're going over to the cord jack pick of the pool, which notoriously does end up being very often one of these intense ratio battles between the two teams. Now, Vietnam did have the better accuracy just then on the LNs, but this is a completely different map here. I think we are seeing a player switching in for Sweden. I expect Sadcat to be the one to join here underneath.
And indeed, it is Sadcat joining. We see Saren going out from Vietnam, and I presume this is going to be another substitution as well.
Perhaps Hitori?
Tori? Most likely.
If they are switching, that is. We'll see.
About this chart, well, of course, Kordjak's accuracy will be a factor, but for this chart in particular, the Kordjaks are pretty spread out, and it's not exactly the kind of Kordjak chart where you're going to be relying most on the anchors being able to carry that, because you'll be shifting figures a lot, and it's kind of tricky to maintain combo in that manner.
Yeah,
Well,
the patterning on this one definitely is a little bit more awkward than you would expect from a typical kind of like early core jack map, and also at 130 BPM, it is a bit higher than you would normally expect. I mean, definitely thinking about last year with the core jacks, maps like Rain was definitely at a much lower BPM than this one.
it is, but anyways, with the substitution, instead of Hitori, it is Moni the team captain of Vietnam, going into this lobby. So it does appear that we are going to be locking in these four players as we enter the second chart of this entire World Cup season.
Yeah, always good to see, you know, these teams, especially like the lower seeded teams, having this kind of depth in their roster, so to speak, so that they can switch out all their players for different particular picks. You know, all of their players being able to contribute in some way to take off the stress of the top two, you would say, which happens a lot. But let's get into it here. This is Sweden's first pick, so they're looking to get on the board early now. Oh, but a very bad rush of judgments there from Array's Self, down to 98.6%.
And that is not really a good side for you to have, and getting off the court drill pretty badly as well. But now, as we enter the more meatier sections of this chart, like, you're going to hope that you're just going to start picking up on that accuracy, but this chart does not get any easier from here. A bit of a respite, but like the one-handed core jacks are pretty nutty.
Yeah, and Array's Self definitely managing to bring themselves back up now. 99% has been reached there, so rebuilding the accuracy, but it looks like a lot of damage has already been done. There's half of the map left, and we can see these are some crazy high accuracies on Vietnam. We can absolutely see why Moni was switched in for this one here. 99.96, and holding strong at least so far, but here we have some even higher density in the patterning. Nobody seeming to flinch just now. Another couple of 200s from Array's Self. That's going to put them further back. Fishcake does trade a little bit though, but it's going to have to be misses at this point.
Indeed. Yeah, the immense accuracy of both Vietnamese players really showing up. Array's Self, unfortunately, finding a drop. Well, it's a pretty clean one, maintaining that 99.2, but you kind of need a miracle here. Maybe see Vietnam break down all of a sudden in the last few seconds of this chart. But I don't think that's going to happen. And Moni, what is that score?
We did see Moni dropped a fair bit of accuracy. That might have been a 200 from Moni just before that I missed there. Oh, a 50.
Oh, wow.
But 53 300s. Yep. We also see the SS from Sadcat as well, the score V1 double S. Just below that 996k there for them, and that is going to be Vietnam with a very early break point here. we can see the overall accuracy just still favoring them, even though this is more of a Rice pick.
And Vietnam is given a position where they could most likely start running away from this point, unless Sweden finds a miracle somewhere. I would presume Vietnam would either be picking LN3 or maybe something out of the way like pure silver, especially with that very technical grace note usage with the LNs.
Pure silver would be like a massive, just like out of nowhere pick to go with. That is a massive wild card pick to throw in there. I think definitely now you really want to secure this lead. If you're Vietnam, you may as well just go straight for this LN3. I like this pick a lot from them. We saw the advantages that came out in LN2, and this one, you know, in theory, I believe this one should favor the more LN biased team, even more than LN2, that is.
Indeed, especially with the very specific kind of LN control you need in the later sections of this chart. There is a certain tournament that happened like in the second half of the previous year where an easier difficulty of this chart was used, and I remember a lot of players actually having trouble in the second half of this chart.
Yeah, a certain tournament being hosted by you, that is.
Yeah. Yeah,
but yes,
let's not mention that.
But yes, this is a map that has been around. I believe this is a bit of a harder difficulty to it though. But yeah, this does have the coordination focus at parts of it that can trip up a team that has not had that level of practice on specifically the coordination maps. So I think this one has the potential for some fairly catastrophic chokes if the players are not too comfortable or not paying attention to some of the patterns. And it's going to start fairly early on at the very start of this map.
The very first half of this one is actually pretty straightforward. Like what Sweden needs on that section is try not to fall behind too much, or maybe in the off chance of getting just a very slight advantage, and try to maintain that as we enter the second half, which gets a bit crazier.
You can always see a few people taking a little bit of accuracy in the intro. Erase Self and Fishcake both having a little bit of a bad time there, but oh, that's a very early miss from Erase Self. Just after the 400 combo mark, actually, probably the worst time to possibly miss. Gonna give Vietnam a bit of an advantage.
And Vietnam starting to get an advantage up as we see Eraser finding yet another drop here. Seirin Shikino on that mid 99% accuracy. That is actually very impressive. Getting that running man LN section unscathed. Like, I'm pretty sure that is one of the trickier patterns in this chart.
Yeah, Fishcake did find the drop to trade out Erase Self's second one there, but it is still one drop for Vietnam versus two combo breaks over on the side of Sweden. And the accuracy also just in favor of Vietnam by a little bit, entirely because of Seirin Shikino. But oh, Erase Self finding another miss now. That's the third one. And this lead for Vietnam is going to start growing as we're getting into the second half. And as you said, there are going to be a little bit of a trickier coordination focuses as we get towards the very end of the map. So that's something to look out for both teams here.
And it's so easy to over or underhold these LNs, especially with the way they're charted. Staggered holds, staggered releases. Maybe sometimes like they're officially together and then here you go. Something like an LN bracket. Very like they look easy watching, but it's not at all. It's not easy to play at all. Like getting that accuracy, as we see Seirin Shikino and Crazy still maintaining their full combos, but the accuracy difference between these two players pretty much making up the difference aside from the earlier drops on Erase Self.
Yeah, even though, you know, Fishcake now, that's the second miss from Fishcake in this one section. Everyone else holding strong, but we can see these misses are not really putting a dent in the score lead that much. It's still 27,000 points, and that is all because of the accuracy. 99.52% from Saren Shikino, above everyone else in the lobby, and that is enough to carry the score in favor of Vietnam, the 3rd point in a row for them.
That is a very impressive 200 counter from Saren.
Yeah, Crady as well with the full combo, doing well themselves, but unfortunately not enough to be able to match Saren's score here.
Now, if you're Sweden, I would think that you might want to start, considering picking that, picking their protect.
Yeah, Raindrop. So Raindrop's an interesting one though, because we saw in Flashdance, even though it is a different style of map, kind of the accuracy, the pure ratio from Vietnam is very, very strong on some of these maps. So maybe Raindrop might end in the same way I'm thinking to Flashdance. So potentially, if you want to get a little bit funky with it, a bit crazy with it, maybe Rice 4 is out there, a bit more technical, a bit harder to act overall. So that might be a place where they could hope for more chokes from Vietnam potentially.
Well, if they're going for the direction of Rice 4, something interesting to see. Their Rice 1 during the qualifiers, which is the technical analog during the qualifiers. Vietnam was 14th, Sweden was 15th. It's extremely close.
Yeah, I think those two teams were within a couple thousand points between each other as far as the team score goes. So really negligible difference between the two teams on that one. So maybe it is something to consider if you want to go towards technical. But, wait. They're picking Flashdance again.
Oh.
Or what?
Wait. I think they forgot that it's their first pick of the match, I think.
Flashdance was already picked and played, so it cannot be picked again for a second time.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
So, yeah, they are going to Raindrop.
There we go,
Okay.
Raindrop. There we go.
So it is going to be their protect at the end of the day, the more straightforward pick here. One that I think all the players here should be fairly comfortable with. It is kind of, nothing too crazy. It's mostly just the chord stream at 155 BPM. Not too crazy with density either.
Very, very straightforward. Actually, the only thing that Sweden needs to be super careful now is that they should not concede any early drops, as we've seen over the past 3 chart. And interestingly, we're not seeing Moni going in for Vietnam this time around.
We definitely have seen Saren Shikino pull out some very strong accuracies so far, at least, on the LN picks. So should still be fine. I feel like Vietnam does have the ability to kind of put whoever feels most comfortable in with these ones.
They do indeed have that depth in their roster. Well, anyways, here we go with Raindrop, and we see Fishcake carrying at 99.9 early on, which I think
strong.
is giving the Vietnamese the advantage here.
Yeah, strong start from all 4 players though. Everyone is above 99.7 right now. Some just dropping below it very briefly there, but yes, it is only Fishcake. That is the only person who is ahead of the rest, 99.92 still at this little bit break section. But that only nets them a 1,000, 2,000 point lead. So even a couple 200s might be enough to flick this towards Sweden as long as they keep up this good accuracy they have.
And Vietnam wants to get the match point as soon as they could. They obviously have to maintain this as well. And now Sweden needs to show the composure that they're showing right now. Maybe start improving their accuracy as well. I mean, we tend to see all the range up and stat that dropped into around the 99.5 level, which isn't a good sign. They're extremely good accuracy. But you're basically a team that's carrying a 99.9, 99.7, and it's making a difference. Yeah,
more drops here from Array Self, down to 99.3. And Sad Cat as well, dropping a little bit down. Saren Shikino drops a tiny bit of accuracy, down to 99.7, but it really is the Fish Cake show right now. Holding, I don't even think, okay, wait, never mind. I was gonna say, I don't even think I've seen that number change, but then it goes up to 99.94.
Yeah, Fish Cake is gaining accuracy. Oh, well, never mind.
No.
They're... Oh, man, why?
That's your first
Anyway.
first curse of the tournament. We're getting that one out of the way now.
Well, I think first curse of this entire World Cup, I think. But anyways,
Yeah.
Fish Cake, I think, is still carrying, like, what, a single or, like, 1 or 2 200s with this play. And this is super, super impressive.
Yeah, this is incredible ratio from Fish Cake. We're gonna see what it is. 100. 1 to 20, 1 to 21 just about for Fish Cake there, which is incredible to do on any map, let alone one in the 7K World Cup here. 4 full combos, by the way, all 4 players holding up well through the entire map, but the accuracy just in favor overall from Vietnam, as has been the case so far. Shout out to the double S from Saren Shikino as well.
Now it's time for Vietnam to maybe find a chart to close this match out, unless Sweden has a comeback plan somewhere.
Yeah, Sweden asking Vietnam to pick Flashdance. They really like that map, it seems. Big fan of the Quad Jacks. But unfortunately, against the rules, not able to be picked. And Vietnam is also out of LN picks, so I would have to imagine, you know, if they wanted to keep up with the LNs, they would go towards one of these hybrid picks. Pure Silver would be the one that is crazy, but... Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Okay. They're going for an entirely new strategy. They're picking probably the single map left in the pool that Sweden has the best chance on, if anything. At least what I would think here.
Again, as I mentioned earlier, like just a few moments ago, before the previous chart started, Sweden and Vietnam have a very, very close team score very, very close team scores on stage 1 during the qualifiers, which is a technical analog to this map pool.
Yeah, and the one kind of caveat to that is that we have seen so far that despite this being the easier kind of pools, that has favored Vietnam overall. I feel like Vietnam has shown that they have had the better overall team accuracy, the better ratio for some of these easier picks compared to the qualifiers. So we'll see how that applies to this one. This one, of course, maybe a bit or much less comfortable, we would expect, than the other 2 Rice maps that we've seen so far.
As expected from a very technical pick. I mean, I think you've seen my commentary, knows it is placed for this chart in particular. Lol, good luck.
Yeah, and we can already see these Graces are crazy hard, and Erase Self already with a very early miss. That's about 100 nodes into the map, so it's not going to create a huge dent in the score lead, but it's definitely going to make things hard for Sweden to be able to catch up here. And they are going to be relying on Vietnam finding a break at some point in the middle of the map now.
And this is a pretty short chart as well, only clocking just a little bit above 2 minutes. And the patterns here is super, super technical. Not exactly the easiest to gain accuracy on unless you're very confident with your skill.
Yeah, we can see Fish Cake dropping in accuracy a fair amount, down to 99.2, and actually Sad Cat and Saren Shikino are both matching each other. That is basically tied accuracy for them. It is just the difference right now, Fish Cake being ahead of Erase Self, who's dropped a little bit more, down to 98.5, understandably. With these snaps, just they hurt me just like looking at them, because I just know I am not hitting 300s on those whatsoever.
And even those stairs, those are stairs, but the timings are pretty different. Like the marginal difference in timing is going to make them very, very hard to get an accuracy on. Sad Guy unfortunately finding 2 consecutive misses here. which
But
I think might start sealing the deal here for Vietnam.
yeah, it is over right now. There is no chance for a comeback as we are into the very last part of the map. It's going to be a double FC yet again for Vietnam, looking so consistent with this map pool, with the accuracy that they have as well. And I was about to say that's a Scorpion double S again for Sarah and Shikino. Unfortunately not, but very, very close to it.
And that ends the very first match of this entire World Cup season. Vietnam sweeping Sweden, and will be having the honor to face the defending champions next weekend.
Yeah, Vietnam versus Philippines. We're going to see some Southeast Asian teams clashing there next weekend in the round of 16 winners side, while I believe, well, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe Sweden goes to the losers bracket and has a bye. I should have probably looked this up before I...
Yeah.
But
like,
yes, they have a bye next
makes
week in the
complicated.
losers bracket.
Buys makes things a little bit too complicated to monitor, at least on our minds. Like, we have to keep on maintaining some notes. Though, if I hope I'm not wrong here, but they might be waiting for the loser of the.
Yes. No, we've
no.
just got we've got confirmation they are going to have a bye next week in the losers bracket, so there will be no losers bracket next week, and then they'll verse the loser of the round of 16 winners match that goes in. So a little bit more complicated than usual as far as the double N brackets, but if you do look at that challenge link, I think all will be cleared up and it should make sense in time. So for now, I believe that it's our only match in this block right now. I think we have another one in a couple hours time, so make sure you stay tuned for that one, because I think definitely going to be some interesting matches this round to keep an eye on. But until then, make sure you're staying tuned, and we'll see you again in a couple hours.